Quick video on the hand. Can't promise it's going to be exactly 5 minutes. When I think of the hand, I think of we have our thenar and our hypothenar eminence, or basically dealing with the thumb or dealing with the pinky. They share the same naming scheme where there is an abductor, there is a flexor, and there's an opponent's muscle which allows for opposition. Let's start at the thumb side because I think it's a little bit more complicated. We have a muscle over here. It is going to be the most lateral, it is going to be the most superficial, and it's actually going to be pathing pretty gosh darn near the tendon belly of the abductor pollicis longus. Coincidentally, that's going to be the abductor pollicis brevis. So what does abduction of the thumb allow us to do? It allows us to go away from midline like that. So the abductor pollicis brevis is going to sit superficially, it's going to sit laterally, and it's going to sit pretty near the abductor pollicis longus tendon. To note, it is innervated by the recurrent branch in the median nerve. It is a little offshoot that goes towards some of the thenar muscles distal to the carpal tunnel off of the median nerve. We call it our $1,000,000 nerve because it allows us to do things with our thumbs. So us having opposable thumbs is one of the cool things about mammals, or one of the cool things about us that's different from other mammals that, makes us very dexterous. So median nerve has an offshoot called the recurrent branch here. That is our super special muscle that makes us different from other mammals. So we can do things like opposition, grasp tools, and manipulate our hands in different planes of motion. So I have my abductor pollicis brevis. Well, I kind of see this thing where it's going to be an abductor, a flexor, and then an opponens. So next, the deeper one is going to be the flexor pollicis brevis, which actually paths pretty near the flexor pollicis longus that we see right here. The flexor pollicis brevis is going to allow us to partake in flexion at the thumb. The thing that we have to know about it, though, is that there's kind of two heads to it. There's a superficial and there's a deep head, and there's actually going to be a split innervation depending on what head you're talking about. This superficial head is going to be the median nerve, specifically that recurrent branch of it, and that deeper head is going to be a branch of the ulnar nerve. So we talk about the ulnar nerve being the 1.5 nerve in the forearm. It's actually a 1.5 nerve at the thumb, with it being half the innervation to the flexor pollicis brevis. So we have an abductor, we have a flexor, and then we have a muscle that allows for opposition, which if I hide this muscle, I can show up here. So the opponent's pollicis muscle that allows us to participate in opposition, that is going to be innervated by the recurrent branch of the median nerve as well. So abductor, flexor, an opposition muscle. So I have median nerve, split median nerve. The other thing that we have is we have to have something, we have an abductor of the thumb. I need an adductor of the thumb. So I have an adductor pollicis, and I have kind of two different fiber arrangements here. There's more of a transverse one, which connects to the third digit or the middle finger. And then I have this oblique one, which kind of connects to a hodgepodge of a bunch of different stuff in between the carpal bones and then near the second and third digit base. And that one is going to also be deep branch of ulnar nerve. So once again, we talk about 1.5 nerve of the thumb. I have my two opponents, or I have my two adductor heads, but we still call it one. So our adductor pollicis longus, and then the two heads of flexor pollicis brevis. One of them, the deeper head, is going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve. So the adductor pollicis and the deeper head of flexor pollicis brevis are all going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve. And that's it for the thenar section. Next, let's go to the hypothenar eminence. We have this weird muscle over here, palmaris brevis. It has this transverse fiber arrangement. It wrinkles the skin. It helps make a concave surface so we can pick up tools. Really not too much else special about it. So let's kind of get that one out of the way. Similarly to on the thenar side, we had an abductor, a flexor, and a muscle that participates in opposition in a superficial to deep arrangement. Same exact thing over here. I have an abductor of the pinky. So abductor digiti minimi. Next, I'm going to have a flexor digiti minimi. And then I'm going to have a muscle that allows us to participate in opposition on the pinky side. So I'm going to have an opponent's digiti minimi. All those are innervated by ulnar nerve. So pretty easy peasy. Mirrored on the thumb and on the pinky side. All right, we got all those out of the way. Next, I think it's best to talk about the interosseous muscles, or the muscles that exist between the digits. Let's start with the lumbricals. Lumbricals, cool muscle here. but they have a weird arrangement. On this anterior side, or excuse me, on the we see the muscle belly initially starting on the anterior, the palmar aspect of the digits, and it kind of starts digging posteriorly there. So it'll start on the palmar aspects and it'll finish on the dorsum of the hand. That actually makes it have different actions at different joints. On the initial joints over here, it is going to cause flexion. Distally, when it crosses to the posterior side, it's going to cause extension at these joints. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like we have flexion at the MCPs and extension at these interphalangeal joints. I'll call this like our Globogym purple cobra muscle. You know, in dodgeball, they're like cobras out, and they're like, it goes from this position to this position. So if you can do this dance and basically say to go from this to this, I have to have lumbrical activation. That's how I keep that straight. So it causes us to flex the MCP joint and extend at the interphalangeal joint. These have a split. These have a split innervation where the two that are by our thumb are going to be median and the two that are by our ulna are going to be ulnar. So similarly to how the flexor digitorum profundus had that split innervation with kind of half fingers and half fingers, we see the same with lumbricals. So second and third digit are going to be median. The third and fifth digit are going to be ulnar. So let's get those out of the way. Let's get this out of the way as well. Other thing I want to talk about is your interosseous muscles. You have one that exists on the palmar side, and then you have some that are more posterior to it or on the dorsal side. So you have your palmar interosseous muscles and you have your dorsal interosseous muscles. I use the mnemonic PAD and DAB for the palmar interosseous muscles adduct and the dorsal interosseous muscles abduct. So PAD and DAB. To note, there are only 3 palmar interosseous muscles and there are 4 dorsal interosseous muscles. So keep that straight. However, they are all innervated by the ulnar nerve, which makes it a little bit easier. So in kind of a palmar to dorsum arrangement, it's going to go lumbricals, then it is going to go palmar interosseous muscles, then it's going to go dorsal interosseous muscles. And that's it for muscles of the hand. On this posterior surface here, we don't have like, like extensor brevis muscles. We just have mainly tendons that exist in the extensor compartment of our hand. Other things that I want us to note here is the arrangement of the 2 arteries there. We have our ulnar and our radial artery. They actually join together and make these loops where there's a superficial branch and there's a deep kind of arch that forms, I should say. So superficial and a deep arch that forms. When we look at our radial and our ulnar arteries here, the ulnar artery actually sits pretty superficially, whereas when we appreciate the radial artery over there, it sits pretty deep. So the radial contributes to the deep arch, and the superficial sitting ulnar artery is going to contribute more so to the superficial arch. And then our last thing to appreciate is the carpal tunnel, which is formed by this transverse ligament here, which is going to be the flexor retinaculum. We need something to anchor down those tendons so they don't cause bowstringing when they go all the way from basically the elbow crossing the wrist up to their respective fingers. So this structure here helps anchor everything down. We have 9 tendons that pass through there and 1 nerve. The 9 tendons actually aren't that hard to memorize because it's 2 sets of muscles going to 4 digits each, which is 8 of them accounted for plus 1 more. So our 4 digits, our 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd digit all have tendons going to them from the flexor digitorum pairing. So the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus each contribute 2 tendons to 4 fingers, making that 8 in total, plus your flexor pollicis longus. So all 9 of those tendons pass through that carpal tunnel there. Additionally, the median nerve goes through there. So when we talk about carpal tunnel, it's going to be the compression of the median nerve as it's passing through that space there. One thing we need to keep track of, though, when we're talking about the median nerve, however, is that we have this nerve right here that actually skips the tunnel. The palmar branch of the median nerve exits proximal to the carpal tunnel, and it provides sensation to that thenar eminence there. So when we talk about people with carpal tunnel syndrome, sometimes they'll have that sparing of their thenar eminence. So they'll be like, ah, man, I'm really having like numbness in these digits over here. I can feel in my thumb. That's explained by the palmar branch of the median nerve exiting before it enters into this canal where that compression is happening at. And then another thing to note too is that the ulnar nerve skips that carpal tunnel entirely. So that's really all I got. Sorry, it's not the shortest video, but we can talk about these more in lab. I'm going to miss the next couple stretch of labs because of work and vacation, but I'll keep having drop-in hours and we'll be in labs to come. But I'll see you guys later. Thank you.